You are lying in bed. It's 3:00 a.m. The house is completely quiet, but your feet feel like they're literally on fire.
Oh, it is such an agonizing feeling.
Right. You throw off the covers, totally desperate for some kind of relief, but nothing helps. Or, maybe for you, it's your hands. It feels like 1,000 invisible needles are just constantly stabbing your fingertips.
Yeah, that's when the panic usually sets in for people.
Exactly. So you do the logical thing. You go to your doctor, you describe this excruciating pain, and they give you that sympathetic little smile, pat your shoulder, and say those two words that just make your blood boil. It's just age.
It's an incredibly dismissive response, honestly. But sadly, it is the harsh reality for millions of people.
Yeah.
You leave that office feeling completely defeated, just assuming this escalating pain is simply the new normal you have to endure.
Well, our mission for today's deep dive into the medical research of Dr. Michael Kent is to show you that this fatalistic diagnosis is dead wrong.
Completely wrong, yeah.
We are looking at a condition today that isn't about getting older at all. It is a completely preventable, highly fixable physical breakdown that is just hiding in plain sight. Okay, let's unpack this, because the core claim we are examining today is a massive paradox.
And it's a frustrating one.
It really is. The very pills you might be taking every single morning to stay healthy, the ones your doctor prescribed could be the exact things destroying your nervous system.
It is entirely understandable to feel a wave of frustration when you realize that. You're trying to do the right thing.
Right, you're following the rules.
Exactly. But our goal here is to understand the actual mechanics of what is happening inside your body. What Dr. Kent's data reveals is that this peripheral nerve pain is actually a massive systemic nutrient deficiency.
A deficiency that we essentially created, right?
Yes, it's a deficiency that our modern lifestyle, our dietary shifts, and our most trusted daily medications have perfectly engineered.
Wow. Okay, so to really grasp the gravity of this, I think we have to visualize the sheer scale of the human nervous system first. Like inside your body right now, you have approximately 45 miles of nerves.
It's hard to even picture that.
45 miles, I looked it up, and that is enough biological wiring to stretch continuously from New York City all the way to Philadelphia.
And those 45 miles of nerves are the infrastructure for literally everything you experience. They allow you to feel the ground beneath your feet, the warmth of a coffee mug, the pressure of a handshake. And the crucial detail here is that every single millimeter of that 45-mile network is wrapped in a protective biological coating called myelin.
So the way I visualize this myelin coating, it's like the rubber insulation on your phone charging cable.
That's a great analogy.
Because when that cable is brand new out of the box, the power flows perfectly from the wall to your phone. But when you bend it too many times and that rubber starts to fray near the plug, the internal wires get exposed.
Right, and they start shorting out.
Exactly, they spark. And when your myelin crumbles, the signals in your body misfire in the exact same way. Your pain receptors just go completely haywire.
They do. Your brain is suddenly flooded with these completely garbled, erratic electrical messages, and it interprets those short circuits as those intense burning and stabbing sensations.
Which is terrifying.
It is. And that physical breakdown of the myelin is the mechanical reality of peripheral neuropathy. It currently affects over 20 million Americans.
20 million.
Yeah, you are looking at 1 in every 16 people walking around with this frayed internal wiring.
But, okay, thinking about that 45 miles of wiring makes me wonder about the logistics here. If this is driven by a single systemic nutrient deficiency, how does one missing element cause the entire grid to short circuit?
That's a very common question.
And why does it almost always seem to start in the feet or the hands?
Well, it comes down to the simple physics of supply lines. Because the nervous network is so incredibly vast, when there's a shortage of the raw materials needed to maintain that myelin insulation, the system prioritizes the core.
Oh, I see. It protects the vital organs first.
Exactly. The supply simply runs out before it reaches the furthest extremities. Your toes and your fingertips are at the very end of the line.
So the frayed wiring at the edges isn't really the root of the disease.
No, not at all. It is merely the first visible result of a total supply chain collapse.
Okay, so if the supply lines are running dry, the obvious question is, where's the leak? You'd assume it must be, I don't know, a terrible diet of junk food.
That's what most people think, yeah.
But Dr. Kent's data points the finger at the exact opposite demographic. It's people who are actively trying to manage their health.
Yes.
Take metformin, for example. It is the single most prescribed diabetes drug on Earth. It's taken faithfully by over 150 million people.
And they take it every day to manage their blood sugar. completely believing they are protecting their longevity.
Right.
But metformin actively blocks the absorption of vitamin B12 in the intestine.
Wait, it actively blocks it?
Yes, it changes the motility and the bacterial makeup of the gut in a way that sweeps the vitamin out before it can be absorbed. Clinical studies actually show that between 10 to 30% of long-term metformin users develop a severe B12 deficiency.
That is wild. And then you layer modern life on top of that. Like a massive portion of the population deals with heartburn, right? So they pop a daily proton pump inhibitor like omeprazole.
Oh, the PPIs are a huge factor here. Those heartburn medications do exactly what they are engineered to do. They shut down the acid pumps in your stomach.
Which feels great if you have acid
It
reflux.
feels great, but here is the critical, often overlooked mechanical flaw in doing that. Vitamin B12 doesn't just float freely in your food. It is tightly bound to animal proteins.
Okay.
You absolutely require strong stomach acid to act as chemical scissors. The acid snips the B12 off the protein.
So without the acid.
Without that acid, the B12 remains locked inside the protein vault. It travels entirely through your digestive tract,
Right.
and it exits your body completely unused.
So let me get this straight. You could be eating a perfectly healthy meal, like a nice steak, but if you took a heartburn pill, you get zero B12 from it.
Effectively zero, yes.
And the deck is stacked against you even further as you age, right? Because if you are over 60, your stomach naturally produces significantly less acid anyway.
Exactly. Or let's say you eat a strict plant-based diet to protect your heart. That diet contains virtually zero B12 to begin with.
It is such a dark irony. Like, you are faithfully taking your diabetes meds, you're neutralizing your heartburn, eating your vegetables, and you are unknowingly walking into a total nutritional catastrophe.
Your nerves are literally starving.
But why wouldn't a doctor immediately flag this? Like, if the well-known side effects of these common drugs are literally starving the nervous system, why is the default medical answer, it's just age?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it exposes a deep structural flaw in modern medicine.
How so?
Well, we have become hyper-focused on treating isolated numbers on a chart. A patient has high blood sugar, so the protocol is to prescribe a drug to lower that specific number.
Right, the metformin.
Yes,
Oh.
a patient has acid reflux, so we prescribe a drug to neutralize the acid. But the human body is an interconnected ecosystem.
You can't just tweak one thing without affecting another.
Exactly. When we mechanically suppress a primary function like stomach acid, we accidentally shut off the intake valve for essential nutrients. The symptom is managed, sure, but the holistic system begins to quietly collapse.
So the body is screaming for vitamin B12, and lacking it causes the nerves to physically die. And the history of how we discovered this mechanism is actually wild.
Oh, it's a fascinating story.
Yeah, back in the 1920s, there was this disease called pernicious anemia, and it was 100% fatal. Like, patients would get weak, terribly pale, they'd develop horrifying neurological symptoms like the burning feet we're talking about, and then they would die.
There was absolutely no cure for it.
Right, until 3 researchers tried something completely unorthodox. Out of pure trial and error, they just started feeding these dying patients massive amounts of raw liver.
Which is quite a treatment.
Yeah, it sounds completely unappetizing, but it worked miraculously. These patients literally rose from their deathbed.
It was a medical marvel at the time.
The scientific community was so stunned by this reversal of a fatal disease that those 3 researchers actually won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1934. But the crazy part is, at the time, they didn't even know what specific compound inside the liver was doing the curing.
No, they didn't. It took another 14 years of rigorous chemistry to finally isolate the molecule.
Wow, 14 years.
Yeah, they found a brilliant red molecule with a single rare cobalt atom at its very center. They named it vitamin B12, or cobalamin, and simply mapping the complex structure of that single molecule earned a second Nobel Prize.
2 Nobel Prizes just to understand this one molecule.
It really highlights how vital it is.
And the reason it warrants that level of prestige is that B12 acts as the absolute master electrician of the nervous system. It performs 2 highly specific jobs that keep our internal wiring from burning down.
Right, and the first job involves a biochemical process called methylation.
Okay, break that down for us.
Basically, your body produces a dangerous, highly inflammatory amino acid called homocysteine. It's just a byproduct of normal metabolism.
So we all have it.
We do. But B12 steps in, grabs that dangerous homocysteine, and transforms it into a beneficial compound. That new compound is then used to create something called SAMe.
And same is the good stuff. Right.
Very good. It is the exact raw material your body uses to build and repair the myelin insulation on your nerves.
Okay, so if you lack B12, that entire assembly line basically grinds to a halt.
It stops completely. But the damage is twofold. Not only do you stop producing the materials needed to repair the frayed myelin, but because B12 isn't there to transform the
And
homocysteine.
homocysteine just builds up.
Exactly. That dangerous amino acid begins to accumulate. It builds up to toxic levels and floods the nervous system like a corrosive poison.
Ouch. And then there's the second job. B12, specifically a bioactive form called adenosylcobalamin, is the literal fuel for your nerves' mitochondria.
Yes, the microscopic power plants inside the cells.
Right. So when the B12 runs out, the power plants fail. And when mitochondrial engines fail, they produce a toxic byproduct called methylmalonic acid, or MMA.
And that MMA is highly destructive.
Yeah, the sources say this acid actively eats away at the myelin structure. So if we picture the nervous system as a crumbling brick wall, B12 is the contractor you hire to fix it.
I like this analogy.
Without B12, the contractor doesn't just fail to show up with new bricks. The contractor actually shows up and starts throwing vials of acid onto whatever is left of your wall.
That is exactly what is happening at a cellular level, and it perfectly explains why the physical symptoms of neuropathy are so excruciating.
Because it's a double assault.
Yes, the nerve isn't simply failing to regenerate, it is being actively poisoned, starved, and structurally dissolved from the inside out, all at the same time.
That sounds horrific.
You have a total lack of repair materials on one hand, and a massive buildup of highly destructive acidic toxins on the other. That chemical fire is exactly what your brain perceives as those stabbing needles.
Okay, so if B12 is the ultimate fix to stop this biological nightmare, I think the logical next step for anyone listening is to just run to the pharmacy, grab a cheap bottle of B12 off the shelf, and consider the problem solved.
That's what most people do, unfortunately.
But the deep dive into Dr. Kent's notes makes it very, very clear that it's a disastrous approach.
It is a massive trap that catches millions of people, and largely because standard medical testing provides a false sense of security.
How so?
Well, if you go to your primary care doctor right now and ask for a standard B12 blood test, the lab results will likely flag a level of 200 picograms per milliliter as normal.
But 200 is catastrophically low. Like, to actually maintain the myelin sheath and keep those nerves healthy, the data shows you need to be pushing levels of 450 to 500 or even higher.
Yes, you absolutely have to advocate for functional testing rather than standard serum testing.
So what tests should we be asking for?
You must ask for an MMA test, that methylmalonic acid we just discussed, and a homocysteine test.
I really want to make sure we understand why those two specific tests are so crucial compared to just the standard blood draw.
Think of homocysteine and MMA as exhaust smoke coming out of a car's tailpipe. A standard B12 blood test is just looking at the gas tank.
Okay.
It measures how much B12 is passively floating around in your bloodstream, but it tells you absolutely nothing about whether that B12 is actually getting inside the cells and turning the engine on.
Oh, wow. So you could have a full tank but a broken engine.
Exactly. If the B12 is actually doing its job inside the cellular engine, there shouldn't be any toxic exhaust. But if you run an MMA or homocysteine test and those levels are high, it means the engine is failing and billowing toxic smoke.
Regardless of how much B12 the standard test says is supposedly sitting uselessly in the blood.
Precisely.
Here's where it gets really interesting and honestly pretty alarming. Let's talk about the supplements themselves. If you walk into a grocery store and look at the ingredient list on a cheap bottle of B12, you will almost certainly see the word cyanocobalamin.
You will. It's everywhere.
And I'm looking at the chemistry of this word, and cyano means exactly what it sounds like. To make this cheap vitamin stable so it can just sit on a shelf for 5 years, the manufacturers actually attach a literal cyanide molecule to it.
It's true. It is a synthetic form that does not exist anywhere in nature.
That's insane.
When you swallow cyanocobalamin, your body recognizes the cyanide. It immediately has to expend vital energy and resources to strip that toxic molecule off and excrete it, just to convert the remaining cobalamin into a form it can actually use.
Why would anyone design a vitamin that way? Like, if the standard blood test is designed to tell you that your tank is full when your engine is actually failing, and the over-the-counter vitamins make your body fight off the cyanide molecule just to get a tiny benefit, how is the average person supposed to advocate for themselves?
By entirely bypassing the cheap synthetics and actively seeking out the bioactive forms.
Okay, so what are we looking for on the label?
You want to look for methylcobalamin. That form already has the methyl group attached, so your nervous system can use it instantly.
No cyanide stripping required.
None. And ideally, You want to combine that with adenosylcobalamin to fuel the mitochondria, or hydroxycobalamin.
And the delivery method matters just as much as the chemical form, right? Because if you are over 60 or taking metformin or taking heartburn meds, we already established that your digestive tract has lost the ability to absorb B12.
Right, the acid scissors are gone.
So swallowing any pill is basically throwing your money down the drain. It will literally pass right through you.
Yes. You have to bypass the digestive system entirely.
How do we do that?
That means utilizing sublingual forms. These are tablets or liquid drops that you let dissolve completely under your tongue. The B12 enters the bloodstream directly through the mucous membranes, entirely skipping the stomach.
That makes sense.
And for patients with active severe neuropathy, the absolute gold standard is intramuscular injections.
Because an injection delivers 100% of the therapeutic dose straight into the tissue.
Exactly.
And the dosing protocols here are serious. We aren't talking about the tiny amount in a standard daily multivitamin.
Oh no, not at all.
If you are actively battling nerve damage, the clinical data suggests therapeutic doses, like 1,000 to 5,000 micrograms of methylcobalamin every single day for 3 to 6 months to see real regeneration.
That aggressive dosing strategy is required because you are fighting a two-front war. You are trying to reverse a massive structural deficit in the myelin while simultaneously flushing out the accumulated toxic exhaust of MMA and homocysteine.
It's a huge cleanup job.
It is. But B12, even at those massive doses, cannot rebuild the nervous system alone.
Right.
It is the master contractor, but a contractor can't build a house without a crew and materials.
Right. It requires a very specific supporting cast of cofactors.
Yes.
Let's look at this crew, because it's fascinating how they all rely on each other. If B12 is the contractor reading the blueprint to rebuild the myelin wall, it needs folate to act as the supply truck delivering the actual bricks.
And Dr. Kin is very strict here. You need methylfolate, not the synthetic folic acid found in cheap vitamins.
Got it. Then you need vitamin B6 to act as the mortar holding those bricks together, specifically the active form of B6 called P5P.
You also need vitamin B1, but specifically a fat-soluble form called benfotiamine.
Why that specific form?
This is absolutely critical for diabetics. High blood sugar acts like microscopic shards of glass tearing up the tiny blood vessels that feed the nerves. Benfotiamine acts as a metabolic shield, reinforcing those vessel walls against sugar toxicity.
Wow, okay. Then you add magnesium, which acts as the system's voltage regulator, basically calming down the hyperactive nerves that are sending those false pain signals.
Exactly. And finally, alpha-lipoic acid, or ALA.
Right. The research shows that 600 milligrams of ALA taken daily acts as a powerful antioxidant that directly cools the burning sensations and reduces numbness.
Yes, it's very effective for symptom relief.
But if any one of those crew members doesn't show up, like the folate, the P5P, the wall doesn't get built no matter how much B12 you pump into the system.
They all have to be present.
And looking at where we naturally get these nutrients brings us to the dietary foundation. Because the data is unambiguous here. The richest, most bioavailable sources of B12 are exclusively animal-based.
Yes. Organ meats like liver, shellfish such as clams, wild-caught salmon, grass-fed beef, and eggs.
So if you are following a strict plant-based or vegan diet,
The research makes it abundantly clear that supplementing with bioactive B12 is not an optional lifestyle choice. It is mandatory for your long-term neurological survival.
which brings up a detail that honestly shocked me. I see spirulina and chlorella marketed everywhere.
Oh, yes.
They are heavily pushed in the wellness space as incredible, natural, plant-based sources of B12. But the chemical breakdown in the research shows they contain what are called B12 analogs. It is literally fake B12.
This raises an important question about how much dangerous misinformation exists in the commercial wellness industry.
Because people think they're doing the right thing.
They do. But consuming a B12 analog from spirulina is exactly like putting a fake key into a lock.
Yeah.
Not only does the fake key fail to turn the lock and open the door, but it actually snaps off and gets stuck in the mechanism.
So it physically blocks the receptors.
Yes. So even if you consume real B12 later, the real key can't get into the lock. You are actively sabotaging your own cellular pathways while believing you are consuming a superfood.
That is just tragic.
And to make matters worse, those fake analogs trick the standard blood tests we talked about.
Oh, no.
The test sees the analog floating in your blood and counts it as real B12, making your levels look perfectly normal while your cells are secretly starving.
Wow. Just wow. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? The core message from this deep dive into Dr. Kent's research is that the burning sensation, the tingling, the numbness, it is not a minor annoyance.
No, it is not.
It is a blaring systemic emergency alarm. Your body is shooting off flares. Because if you wait too long and ignore the alarm, that nerve damage crosses a threshold and becomes completely irreversible.
And that leads to a loss of mobility, a loss of independence, and frankly, a loss of dignity.
But the deeply hopeful part of this science is that your body has a truly miraculous capacity to heal itself. If you stop the toxic medications from blocking absorption and you give your cells the actual bioactive tools they need, you can rebuild the wiring before you cross that point of no return.
It requires proactive advocacy, absolutely. But it is deeply empowering to know that the mechanical tools for recovery exist.
It really is.
And I think there is a broader implication here for how we view health. If a single, highly preventable vitamin deficiency can perfectly mimic the supposedly inevitable decline of aging, costing millions of people their mobility and independence, while the modern medical system largely looks the other way,
Yeah.
how many other unexplained chronic conditions in our aging population might just be our bodies starving for a fundamental nutrient, while we blindly throw complex pharmaceuticals at the symptom?
That is an incredible point to end on. Next time you wake up at 3:00 a.m. and it feels like your feet are on fire, remember, that isn't just aging, that's your wiring asking for help.